I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Hudson Hammond, and you're listening to...
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to...
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Beep. Go. Hello?
Hello?
I think we may have lost Dr. J.
No. Shit, I was speaking about, sorry about that. I was speaking to myself. Anyway, I was saying, welcome back, folks, to another episode of Dr. J Radio Live. I'm your host, Dr. J, broadcasting from the City of Angels. And I do want you to keep in mind that there are several ways to listen, as you probably are from one of the four methods, if not 5 or 6 at this moment. First of all, I want to thank the people at Late Night in the Midlands for doing a lot of work behind the scenes and while I'm on air to make this happen. I also want to thank Wise Frog, too, from Black Swamp Digital Radio, who is now taking the show 5 days a week, where as opposed to last week and the month before, he was only doing it once or twice a week. And for those of you in the United Kingdom, Deprogram Radio Network. And please, if you want to listen through terrestrial radio, just look at those, particularly L&M and Deprogrammed, because they do have terrestrial stations that do play this show. And all you YouTube people out there, I'd like to thank you very much for being on here every time you get the alert that we're doing a live stream, which will always be the same time. We do apologize for being late. We had to take care of some technical equipment. Now, unless you've not paid attention to our promotion, then clearly you're in for a surprise. He is a great guest. He's more than that. As a matter of fact, he is also a radio host. He is also an author of many books. One of my absolute favorite books, the moment it came out, hardcover, was The Day After Roswell. That should be a big hint for you too. And if that wasn't enough, he speaks. He's definitely one of those people that is called to speak at conferences around the United States, if not the entire world, which I'll let him get into it. And if you wonder who the heck I'm talking about, it's the one and only Mr. Bill Birnes. Bill, welcome back, my friend.
Hey, thank you very much, Dr. J.
It's always a pleasure to speak to you because nothing gets dull. On air, off air, absolutely nothing. Now, I'm sure because you had UFO Magazine, people want to immediately jump into that. But we've talked about things like that. We had a show on Corso, and we will. Everybody out there listening, if that's what you want to hear, I promise you, Bill and I, he'll be back on. That's a fact. You know, this is, like I said, not his first time and not his last time, knock on wood, assuming everything is good in the world, if not the United States at the least, so we can continue to do these shows with someone being literally on the other coast as me. So, Bill, last time I usually don't like to bring up Art Bell or the time that I worked with him because I don't want people to, oh, geez, she worked with Art Bell. But I have to make this a point because this was one of the big things that I brought to Art Bell. It was you with a friend, Jim Sanders, talking about the conspiracy and what really happened with flight TWA Flight 800. TWA, Trans World Airlines, they are no longer there anymore. And for a little tiny trivia for all you folks out there, by the way, it was started and owned by Howard Hughes. So how do you like them apples? So let me ask you a question, Bill. When did you first realize something was wrong? Because I just figured, wow, we accidentally mistakenly shot one of our own jets down and killing all these Americans and foreigners who were going wherever they were.
This is a 3-track story where at the end, not only do all the tracks merge, but the merged tracks at this point, continue for 20 years. 20 years.
Oh, shit. Oh, folks, sorry about that. We lost a live listener, and I'm going to fix that right now. So you hang tight, folks. This will be fixed very easily. Just give me
Would you like me to go to a short break? Standing by, technical difficulties. Standing by, technical difficulties.
the 202 number again. What is it? Hold on. Oops. Keyboard.
202-559-7943.
Ooh, hold on a second. I'm adding a call. 1202
559-7943.
79 something 3. Hold on, you're breaking up a little bit too. Can you one more time?
202-559-7943.
43. That's what I was missing. Okay. Now let's merge the call. Come on. It's trying to call your 202 now. 559-7943. There we go. Okay. Let's no, it's not swap. Merge calls. Bill. Okay, this is good. Let me take this off speaker and let me move this away. It's not the first time we've had technical trouble for one reason or another. I think they're trying to silence you. But nonetheless, Katie, whenever you're ready, we will pick up right where we left off.
Go right ahead.
Okay, folks, sorry for the technical trouble. I purposely think because of all this high-tech equipment and what we pay for to make everything happen, when someone is silenced, they either are too close to the truth or they're telling the truth that somebody does not want us to know. For instance, TWA Flight 800, that right there always had the earmarkings of a conspiracy / cover-up and so much more. And that's what you're going to get exposed to today. So let me ask you, Bill, when you first started paying attention to what happened, what exactly first gave you an indication that this was not just a random plane crash, that this was more, correct me if I'm wrong, a rocket that was shot to destroy that plane right as soon as it took off from JFK? Uh-oh. Don't tell me we lost our guest again. Let's double check here. Oh, wow. Hold on a second, Katie. Okay. Let me bring him back again. Again, somebody is not wanting Mr. Birnes to speak today. Welcome to live radio, folks. This is not an uncommon occurrence. However, it is common when it comes to people who know a lot. So let me merge both of these people together because we've already had enough trouble with all the studio equipment from late night in the Midlands and with me, and it's still a problem. So let's make sure. Oh, there we go. Lost them again. So, folks, just hang tight. And don't worry about the reverb. It will go away as I get Mr. Bill Birnes back on the show. Okay, there we go. Finally.
Okay.
All right. It seems to me the truth from you is being suppressed. Somebody out there, or several people, or even agencies and private military contractors don't want you to be heard, especially since we are on so many listeners via so many stations. So I think that's the case. But you know what, Bill? You know this as well as I do. They're not going to stop us. They cannot stop us. They can try.
Well, first of all, the book is already out. So I mean, the book has been out for. One version of the book about this has been out for 20 years. Another version has been out for 5 years. So the book's been out. But the point is, this is where you have these three stories all revolving around this one incident that all come together at the very end and wind up just in a really, not even a mysterious way, in an obvious way, of affecting the 2016 election. Beyond all the conspiracy theories, this is one of those theories that really does hold water. And it goes something like this. In July 1996, TWA Flight 800 is a regular daily flight. It's the flight from New York to Paris that leaves JFK at 8 in the evening. Regular flight. But because it is a regular flight, the red-eye flight to Paris, because of that, you have a lot of feeder flights coming into JFK from other parts of the country, basically to pick up the the transatlantic flight. So on this particular night in July, there was a feeder flight coming in from Chicago, but because the storms were so intense over the Great Lakes that the flight was held up for an hour, was an hour late to JFK, to Kennedy Airport. They held Flight 800 for an hour to make its big connecting flight from Chicago. And finally, an hour late, the plane takes off, and its transatlantic route takes it out over Long Island, out over the Atlantic, and then across the Atlantic to France, to Paris. On this particular night, the United States Navy was testing a weapon, and the weapon was a weapon based on the coordinated engagement capability. That's the name of this thing. It was a weapon in which radars from different vantage points locked in on an area, and the point was that a computer would then distinguish between friendlies and hostiles. Obviously, if a plane is flying, if the plane is sending its basically identification codes, then obviously the radar would pick that up. But if not, this would identify the flight path, figure out if it was a threat. If it determined that it was a threat, it would then launch a missile. It would determine what platform it would use to launch a missile from a task force fleet off ashore. This was a brown water exercise. It would launch a missile, and it would destroy the incoming target. The whole point of this exercise was to protect the Navy ships fighting inshore battles, landing on beaches, protecting Marines, flying into the Middle East, in Europe, things like that, sailing to the Middle East and Europe, but inshore water, and protect our submarines from aircraft that are going to be dropping depth charges and to shoot at the submarines, to drop missiles on them. So this was that exercise. And the submarine they were using off Long Island that night, the TWA Flight 800 flew through, had not yet been commissioned. That meant that she was not a officially a United States Navy submarine. She was a test vessel from General Electric Boat Works up in Connecticut.
So
on that,
keep going.
No, so on that particular night, the Navy, the Army launches a cruise missile, a small drone type cruise missile, to simulate an aircraft attack on the submarine. The cooperation engagement capability mechanism works perfectly. A laser transmits the drone's coordinates to a targeting mechanism. The missile is chosen. The submarine, it's the Seawolf class, fires the missile. Then something tragic happens. As the missile, with its own semi-active radar, locks on the drone, a much, much bigger target flies right in front of the guided missile's path. And that was the 747. That was TWA Flight 800. By the time the heat-seeking warhead on the Navy missile takes over, it homes it on the number 3 engine of the 747, lets the drone go up on its own, homes it on the 747 number 3 jet engine, blows it off the wing. The plane is destroyed. 240 people are killed, and that's what happened that night. But there was a secret weapon involved. We had a way to transmit coordinates from the air underwater without the submarine ever having to surface its radio mast. That was a secret weapon.
Now, we know MH370, one of the speculations was that one of the defense contractors in China, I don't know, I doubt she was CEO, but something in the board of directors, and she was a white American woman, which is not very common to have such a high-ranking position in a foreign defense and a foreign defense, I guess, job, but it's literally for the government. One of the speculations of MH370, and some people have laid out proof, but her boyfriend was carrying either a prototype or something important, and that's why it was brought down. When you're talking about the weapon, you're talking about the weapon that was used in the submarine to shoot down TWA Flight 800, or was it something on TWA Flight 800 that needed to be destroyed and not spread around the world?
No. What I'm saying is that the secret weapon, the real secret weapon, was that the aircraft flying above, were able to transmit the coordinates of an incoming missile. That was the anti-submarine missile. That was the drone simulating that to transmit the coordinates to that without the submarine, which later became the USS Seawolf, without the submarine ever having to raise its radio antenna. Normally, before this, for a submarine to receive instructions, it would have to raise its radio antenna, raise its flag, basically. Raise its antenna, because then it could receive the radio waves that it couldn't receive underwater. Now, with this new device, our submarines didn't have to raise their flags, their radio antenna, just to receive the information. Now they could receive it while still underwater using a laser carrier signal. This was a phenomenally top secret device that they were using. It had only been in action. It had never seen warfare. It had only been in action, being tested and developed for less than 10 years. So it was a major, major advance in stealth technology, which we couldn't allow to be revealed. As a result, once Flight 800 crashed, once it was over, this elaborate cover-up was put in place where the New York office of the FBI suddenly took over the level of the investigation. And remember, the whole time, the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, was saying, oh, this was just because the central wing tank exploded. The central wing tank exploded on its own. That's what did it. No. What happened was the USS Seawolf fired an anti-aircraft missile at a drone, but the 740 Flight 800 flew through. The missile locked on to Flight 800. The plane was destroyed. And at that point, nobody in the administration, because it was a top secret weapon, nobody could reveal. There had to be a cover-up. Also, it was 1996. Remember, it's 1996. Bill Clinton, President Clinton, had already been investigated by the Starr Commission. We'd already seen the bombing of the one bombing at the World Trade Center in '93, the bombing at the Murrah Center, also in Oklahoma. That was in Oklahoma. Then the bombing at the Atlanta Olympics. Then the bombing of a Planned Parenthood in Atlanta. My God, it seemed like the country was exploding. Also, remember how the Clinton administration started off by the disaster at Waco. So
yes.
Imagine this hitting right supposedly 4 or 5 months before the presidential election, while he was busy being impeached.
No, you're
you realize
absolutely
how
right.
deadly this was?
Yes. Now, why, if this weapon was used to destroy this plane, why would we use it on our own civilians?
We wouldn't. That's the whole point. It was not to be used on civilians. It was an accident. The Flight 800 flew through a military operations area, but nobody notified the military that the plane was a regularly scheduled airliner, a 747, that was making a regularly scheduled route, but was held up because of bad weather over the Great Lakes. So the military didn't know that there was a commercial airliner right through the box of air that comprised the military operations area off the east coast, southern end of Long Island. W105 was the name of the military operations area. Nobody told them that there was a plane flying through. So the whole communication system seemed to break down. And of course, they didn't have to know, because the missile itself, the guided missile fired by the submarine itself, made the determination to lock on the target bigger on radar, blocking its original target and setting up a whole new target. At that point, the heat-seeking warhead took over, and the guided missile, the anti-aircraft missile, guided itself right to the number 3 engine on the right wing of the 747. The inner right wing blew the wing right off. Plane heeled over on its side. Fire emerged. The warhead, the thermite warhead from the missile, shot right through the cabin, splitting the cabin off from the rest of the airplane. And so that's what happened. So there was this reporter whose name is Jim Sanders. His wife, Elizabeth Sanders, trained some of that international flight crew because she was a flight attendant training manager at TWA. TWA it had been started by Howard Hughes, but it was still in the effects of some bad management and was losing money. So the Sanders, now retired, well, Elizabeth Sanders still worked for TWA. They're sitting there in front of this TV set watching cable news, and suddenly the news of this tragic accident took place. Well, Liz Sanders knows immediately her flight crew was on it. That's the flight that she was training them for, that particular routine flight to a transatlantic flight. That's one. So she's horrified. Then there's this mysterious announcement, almost like out of nowhere, that says the Navy says that it is not responsible for shooting down TWA Flight 800. Well, Jim Sanders was a former former Seal Beach police officer, and suddenly he says to himself, "Wait a minute! If somebody that I had in custody that I was questioning said I didn't kill that person, and I never accused you of killing that person, why would you deny something you were never accused of in the first place?" That's what he argues. He said something's wrong. This sounds like Columbo to me, that you've got somebody confessing in reverse to a crime. So he begins investigating the United States Navy. Now, luckily, Jim Sanders works for the Riverside Press Enterprise newspaper. He's a credentialed reporter. So he's certainly entitled, certainly the Constitution gives him all the reason he needs to investigate what he thinks is a crime that's being covered up by the administration. Sure enough, Jim Sanders talks to somebody at the hangar who tells him, hey, look, there's something wrong here. Something's very wrong with this investigation. The FBI is coming into the hangar while the NTSB is trying to reconstruct what's happening with this airplane. Why would the FBI be coming in here if all the publicity about the crash is that it's the center wing tank? And we've got folks from Boeing that manufactured the plane here, and they're scratching their heads saying they can't tell why the center wing tank would up and explode, since it never exploded before. Why would it suddenly decide to explode? And he gave all the things they were looking at, wires where the insulation had been scraped off inside the central wing tank. Suddenly the exchange pump was bad that initiated a spark that lit the fuel. But there wasn't that much jet fuel in the central wing tank to begin with. Yeah, there were fumes, but it was really 30 plus degrees in there. It wasn't at the heating point. So that was a problem. The conditions inside the center wing tank, the external events initiating an explosion of the center wing tank, none of those were present inside the aircraft. That's what the NTSB was saying. But the FBI was saying there's a bomb on board. We're finding traces of an explosive on board. These two stories didn't work. Then this senior pilot at TWA who was at the reconstruction hangar says to Sanders, look, I took a piece of the seat back off. There's this strange red material on the back of the seat. I'm going to send this thing to you. I sent it to you already. Throws it in overnight. Sanders gets it, tests it. It's thermite. Thermite on the inside of an airplane cabin. Thermite, one of the most inflammable substances around, and it's only used in one weapon. Just one, circa 1996. That was a United States Navy anti-aircraft missile.
That's actually a really scary thought. Now, do you think that these missiles are all over the United States on their vessels? And do you think that I like to say Trans World Airlines, Flight 800 could have also been replicated by, say, Alaskan Airlines or something else, but by the doing of our own hands in America? I just don't understand these politicians.
That can happen.
Yeah, but why do these politicians think of us just as little numbers and we're expendable, but yet their families and their friends have deep underground bunkers so they could live in case of a fallout or whatever? Yet, 600 people died there, or 150,000 people died there of our own people, and nothing. It's just a very scary thought, because that shows you what the United States thinks of humans.
Well, look at the reaction to what happened in Puerto Rico last year. Now we know that thousands of people died. These were Americans who died. This was not some foreign country in some lonely island somewhere. Nobody should die in those situations. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that for the American media, for Americans, this was an American territory on the East Coast. And people died after Hurricane Maria because the government, one of the reasons that the government never even mobilized to do some of the basic work, getting supplies, mainly power and water, to the people on the island that needed it. The hospital ship that could have treated people was like weeks before it came, that when it came, it was mostly empty. Supplies were rotting on the dock, and foreign vessels couldn't help because we have an act called the Jones Act that basically precluded foreign help in the United States territory unless the government signed off on it. They didn't sign off on it. I mean,
Of course they would.
if I were a conspiracy theorist, okay, let's say I were a conspiracy theorist, I were a crazy, whacked out, the government is against you, conspiracy theorists, the rich upper classes, I would say that they tried to wipe out Puerto Rico so they could rebuild Puerto Rico as a resort and gentrify Puerto Rico and make money from it. That would be my conspiracy theory.
And that's really sad because, again, that just goes money over people's lives. I still cannot fathom why the people at top or the people in the CIA, or I'm sure you know the saying, I call them clowns in America, or any of those alphabet soup agencies, why the heck do they just kill people, and say, oh, okay, well, killing these people will allow us to do this financially or have another military base or a resort or something. I mean, geez, you know this for a fact. If you fly over Dreamland, Area 51, Dreamland, as everybody doesn't know, is the call sign when you're getting near it. You will get shot down. Okay, I don't even know if you get a warning. Maybe that's...
You get a warning.
But that's far away, right?
Well, yes. Yeah, they don't want to have to do anything, and they will scramble, and they will scramble aircraft out of Nellis to basically guide you off. You will know that they're armed. They flop over on their backs. They do a roll, and you can see they have missiles. I mean, you get all the hand signals. You get all the warnings. Nobody kills innocent citizens like that. I mean, and here's a story about Area 51. So there were these school teachers years ago. There were these school teachers who went there at night. They were looking for UFOs in the Nevada desert. And so they're outside Area 51, and they're walking along the edge. And around Area 51, all the trails leading up to the base have sensors so that people can monitor the sounds around the base to know if anybody is approaching. They have ground sensors, they have mics. So these two teachers, not two, maybe more, and they're discussing whether to step over the border of the base. And people inside the base are listening to them. And finally, they step over the border, they walk on the base, then they get frightened and they leave the base and they go on their way.
Oh,
they replay the tapes the next morning. And the bosses of the security guards that are ex-Delta Force, they're Delta Force guys, by the way. Their bosses say, "Hey, why didn't you shoot these people?" And finally, one of the sergeants says, "Look, these are school teachers. We didn't join the Army. They're the toughest unit in the Army to shoot other Americans. That's not what we did. They didn't hurt anything. They were on the site. They left the site. They're gone. It's over." And so for that response, the bosses said, "All you guys are going back to the front. This is to Afghanistan. You're no longer going to be here." And the guy said, "Finally, we can do something really important." And the guards were rotated out. And there you go. That's how people look at Area 51.
Yeah, and obviously, I believe the private military firm, the PMC that's running it now, isn't it called Wackenhut?
I'm not sure if it's Wackenhut or not that's running it, but they do have private contractors running it.
Exactly, because they don't have official military. And this is actually a really scary thought. You have all these soldiers, they're very underpaid, but you finish being a soldier, specifically if you are Special Forces, Navy SEAL, Delta Force, Marine Recon, regardless. When you finish, I know a lot of friends that I've had, that were just disappointed. They say, "Oh, I had a horrible time in the military," but then all of a sudden they get hired by the CIA or no such agency, NSA, and they're put right back to work. I don't think I've told you this before, but the listeners out there, you've heard me say this a few times. I had a great friend. He was, obviously much older, and he was very closed. He wouldn't really talk about himself. It took me a few years to get to know him. And he was a Navy SEAL. And he told me at the time there was no six teams. And by the way, I don't even think there are six teams in the Navy SEALs right now, because he said it's just a number to scare people. Oh, we have six teams, but really we only have three. So I don't know if they call it 1, 2, and 6. I don't know. He said the team he was on was three. And so what he told me is during Vietnam and all the surrounding areas, Laos, Cambodia, etc., his job was it was some of the saddest things he did, but it was always told by a CIA officer. There was one CIA officers that were telling him what to do. And I asked him, what's the thing that bothers you the most? And he said, killing American pilots. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, every time they got captured, I would have to be a long distance away. I'd have to do a halo jump, which is high altitude, low opening. For people out there who don't understand that, I'm a skydiver. I could explain it. You will jump out somewhere between 30,000 feet, maybe even 35, 38, whatever it is, but you have to have an oxygen mask or you will have hypoxia. My hard deck, meaning that's the decision, the altitude that I have to make a decision whether I'm going to open my reserve or I'm going to land with what I have, it's supposed to be with my license because I'm an experienced jumper at 2,000, but I usually make it around 3,000. That way I can have room, because it takes about 700 feet for your reserve to open and another 1,000 feet for your main to open. I do want a little bit of time to figure out where the heck I'm going to land. I don't want to land in power lines or something like that. He said that in the years of 68, 69, a lot of his missions that bothered him were flying or getting dropped in hot zones. He even told me a story of how he was worried because where he ended up hiding was in a pond and using one of those bamboo straws to breathe, and he could not make a movement because two people from what do they call them again, the Viet Cong were right there. Yeah, and if he called them, or if he shot them or made any noise, then it would cause the ruckus. He said because from things like Hanoi Hilton and other things like that serious torture, a lot of people did break. And because the pilots have a lot more knowledge in their head, his mission was to extract or exterminate. And he said as he was looking down his long-barreled sniper rifle, it would bother him knowing that that's a good American person who just sadly got shot down and would have to kill them. That's what bothers him. And then I said, what did you do after? He said, well, I did 2 PMC jobs. And he said the crazy thing is that the same CIA officer that was telling him what to do when he was in the actual Navy, the SEALs, was telling him to do other things. So, for instance, one of the things he did in 68, 69 was eradicate coca fields and opium fields, yet in 69 and 70, he said both missions were to bring or to guard giant, huge, I don't want to say tankers, but cargo ships of cocaine. And so the CIA is very flip-floppy. I would not be surprised if they're behind doing sad things like this, because if you don't toe the line, then you are absolutely gone. And I know you could say that. I know you know that.
Well, first of all, the CIA in the late 40s wasn't formed until 47, 48. But in the late 40s, the CIA was handling money trafficking for the narco drug dealers in the whole Southeast Asia Triangle. So the CIA has been involved with drugs in that area since the 40s. So what they were doing in the 60s is really no surprise. They were doing this throughout the 50s. So that is just not a surprise. They were involved. They were taking a cut from the money, and they were really funding their own budgets through drug money, through drug sales.
Yes.
That was one of the reasons we got into Vietnam in the first place. But the mission you were describing that your friend was on,
yes,
was called Sensitively and Quietly. That was the name of it.
Yes.
And it was a way to extract POWs, mainly pilots, out from the North Vietnamese, or kill them, because they would be, and they would come in under false identities. It was really important because for two reasons. One, the communists, the Soviets and the Chinese were using those identities to as cover for spies coming into this country. And so it was happening all over again. The person who told me this was Phil Corso, because he was the person who knew about this because of what happened in the Korean War. Same thing happened in the Korean War.
Yes.
That's happened in Vietnam.
You're absolutely
and
correct.
I've spoken to Army Special Forces guys who've done those extractions or assassinations.
Now, like I said, the first huge book that I read on UFOs, even though I had several before that, drew me to it, was The Day After Roswell. And to this day, Bill, I got to tell you, you did a fantastic job. And some people are going to discredit it, but there was like a 15-minute special here in Los Angeles. At the time, it was KCAL in Channel 5. They've changed it so many times. CW, I don't even know what it's called now. And why would someone literally before their death write something that is not true? I mean, why would they want to have their legacy and family tarnished? And he was so darn detailed in that book and in his interview. And I remember one of the things I will never forget is his facial expression, the way he's talking. And I don't know what they asked him, but he said, why shouldn't people know? This needs to be known to people because this changes everything. And I absolutely agree with him. Okay, sure, some of the people have fear that we are going to get scared. But in the long run, why would we get scared? Because we know we're not going to be alone. We know we're going to have interaction. And depending on which types of extraterrestrials come to see us, then they're going to either, love us, enjoy us, or, if they hate us, they'll hate us. But I'm sure other ones get the warning. So to me, the more beings, the better. So I was shocked that the people treated Corso that way. Now, I'm going to briefly start this subject, or how about this? Let me find out because this is going to take a lot after. Oh, wow. Let me read you these questions, and then I am going to, we'll switch to the other topic after break. Okay. Dr. Birnes, what have you heard? This is Gregory Vega asks, what have you heard about the Sun Observatory closure in New Mexico and photos being captured showing anomalies around and in front of the sun? And then also, I'll let you answer that one first before I get to the next one.
Well, there are different stories circulating about that. One story is that it is ETs, and there are anomalies in front of the sun, and that they're basically using any excuse they can to close the observatory while all the data is being transcribed, digitally obviously, transcribed and then scrubbed. So nobody's going to walk over it. So it is the scrubbing and transcribing of the data. It's not the observation. The observation is already done. It is the data work going on at the observatory. That's one story. The other story is, no. There were people at the observatory installation that were engaging in child porn, that they were basically passing pictures around. They were busted on the internet. The FBI moved in. They got the location. They closed the observatory, and they did the bust. Or it's the first story that's the true story, and they're using the second story as a cover.
Okay, here is the second question, and it might be the... is it the same person? I have no idea. Okay, this is William Shemmerhorn asks, tell us about Planet X Nibiru, the missing orbit.
Right. Right now, astrophysicists are surmising that there is. So we've discovered exoplanetoids, dwarf planets, circling right outside Pluto, and we've discovered a bunch of moons that are out there, and the moons are not acting as though they're Pluto's moons. They're acting as though that they are orbiting something else. And it's the something else. Now, we know that we have Ceres, that's a 10th planet or planetoid beyond Pluto. But now there are surmising that, in fact, there is a super-sized Earth way out. It's part of the solar system, but it is way out, over 1 billion miles away from Pluto. And that is what is distorting the orbits of the moons way out in beyond Pluto. That's distorting their orbits, and that they're surmising might be what others have called super Earth or Nibiru.
Okay, here is yet another one. Like I said, we're going to go through these, take a break, and then we're going to switch topics on how the TWA or Trans World Airlines, it's easier for me to say that, Flight 800 affected the elections. So everybody hang tight. We will get to that, and keep the questions coming, and we will absolutely ask our guests. Okay, this one is, okay, Karen Wagner. I hope I pronounced Wagner properly. It's not Wagner, it's with an E. Did Dr. Birnes hear of an accident over the Baltic Sea?
Yes, I heard. I don't know anything about it, but I certainly heard about it. There were different stories from the Baltic that are getting conflated, so I'm not sure how to unravel the different threads. But one involved an undersea accident, one involved a fishing accident. I'm not sure which is which, but yes.
Okay. So, Mr. What did I say? Or Miss? Or I gotta find it. The questions keep coming in. I'm sorry about that, Bill. Okay, that was Karen. Miss Karen. Okay, I hope that answers your questions. And here's the last one before we're gonna go to break. It says, not your grandma asks, what does you, Bill, think about Field, or is it Field McConnell, if that makes any sense?
Unless she means Jeffrey McDonald, but no, I don't know Field McDonald.
Yes, neither do I. Okay, let me just make sure that my audio engineers are ready to take a break. And if they are, everybody stay tuned. So, Miss Neely, or Mrs. Neely and Mr. Neely, let me know if you folks are ready to take this break. Otherwise, me and Bill can keep going on. This is the cool thing I love about Bill. I was subscribing to his magazine from geez, as early as I can remember. Every time he was on TV, for whether it been the shows he did or he appeared in something else, every time someone gave me a DVD or a VHS at the time, I knew a lot about Bill, and he was one of the, to me at the time, and still is one of the biggest authorities on this. Okay, now I'm going to ask my own open-ended, broad question, Mr. Birnes, and hopefully they'll respond by then. What got you into paranormal, specifically UFOs, and caused you to actually have oh wait, they're ready. Just I'll let you answer that question. But what got you into the field of paranormal, but specifically UFOs, to the point of writing books and speaking to some of the most important people like Philip Corso? He trusted you more than anybody else to write the book, and it sold a lot of copies. I mean, it's still selling from what I see. I actually just turned someone onto it recently by letting them read my copy, and I have the original hard copy. I don't know if you have it. I'm sure you do it in no,
I
not
do. I
hard
have the
cover.
first edition.
No, I'm saying you also have it now, I would think, in non-hard copy, in a soft copy, right? Paperback.
Right. I've got it in paperback, and I've got it's in mass market paperback and trade paperback. And I also have it, and it's also in a bunch of international editions in French and Spanish and in Chinese and a lot of other editions.
So, like I said, before we go to the break, I am going to say a question which is sort of open-ended. What year or how old were you when you really started to pay attention that, hey, we're not alone, we're being visited, and there's a huge conspiracy that's covering it up? And on top of that, since we're talking about TWA Flight 800, why well, you obviously figured out that it was a conspiracy there, cover up there, and you wrote a book about it. And
It was Jim Sanders.
It was Jim Sanders who wrote a book. But the last time I had you both on our show, this is why I didn't need him, because I know you know that and a lot more. So you're the person I really wanted to speak to, and you're the person, now that I'm back on air, I'm going to have pretty regularly, as often as I can, and we'll bring Nancy on sometime too, so you both can talk. So go ahead and answer that question, and then let me ask a couple more that are still coming in on these topics. Then we'll take a break. So, what was it, and how old were you?
Well, I mean, I first had a UFO sighting back when I was a kid in New York City, back in the 1950s. And so I knew there was something there. I mean, and it was right about the same time, the same general time frame as the UFOs over Washington, D.C. During that July 1952. This wasn't 52, but it was right in that whole same time frame. It was like 8 or 9 years old, so over in 52, 53. That's when I had the sighting, and I know that it was during kind of the blacklist, because my father was very nervous that it was a subversive act to look for UFOs. Anyway, and then it was really kind of dormant. I mean, nothing really. And then in 1995, I was in California, and I was working with a movie company on POW MIAs. That's why I know about Sensitively and Quietly, that program. And one of the people that we'd been alerted to, because he was testifying on MIAs before the Dornan Committee, was Philip Corso. And he was testifying to Operation Little Switch, Big Switch, the end of the Korean War in 1953, when he was working for Eisenhower. And he was telling everybody that that Eisenhower knew that we were leaving POW MIAs behind in after the Korean War, that we're leaving them to the Koreans, and that he revealed that. And people were going crazy. This was 1995. People are running around going crazy. And this was like 2 years after John Kerry had gone to Vietnam to get into normal relations with Vietnam and give them the most friendly nation status in trade, most favored nations trade status. And everybody's kind of scratching our heads saying, why? And now in 95, and Corso was saying that we left men behind. And so it suddenly goes right up to the front of the headlines. And at first they were looking for in the National Archives to find the memo, the finding that Corso said that Eisenhower signed, couldn't find it. And so Corso is obviously a liar. Then they went to the Eisenhower library, and sure enough, there it is in Eisenhower's handwriting. It says "Pass to Corso," and so suddenly this guy is on the cover of all these magazines. He's suddenly blowing the whistle on a peace agreement in 1993. So we're talking about this book on MIAs, and suddenly he lets it drop that he investigated the Kennedy assassination he investigated the Warren Commission for Richard Russell in the Senate. Well, you can imagine the hushed tones. Then he says, and that was after he was an Army R&D when he handled the Roswell debris. And suddenly it's the what debris? Where? What? Did you see Roswell?
That's right.
And suddenly, and then the movie company looks at me and says, that's the book. And that's how I got involved in UFOs the second time.
Okay, here is yet another one. Okay, Craig Herba, how I say that name properly. When's the new Area 51 I've heard about? Because of the popularity of Area 51, everything has been moved. Is that true?
Well, a lot of stuff's been moved. The important thing to remember at Area 51 is that it was established originally not for aliens or ETs. It was established originally for the surveillance aircraft that we have, because they have very long wingspans. So it was the U-2s that we're developing. And so Area 51 is an old artillery range from World War II that was where the runways were built to handle the U-2. Now, and then the SR-71, but it's basically the U-2. And so that was the reason for Area 51. Yes, there were exotic experiments going on there, and a lot of those experiments are moved to Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah, such as the invisibility cloaking experiments are moved to Dugway, Utah, where it's more isolated than Area 51, and they're a lot less friendly to people getting too close to the barbed wire.
Okay, another one. Again, I'm just spitting these out because people have been writing them in. Okay. Georgia Vega asks, Dr. Birnes, what is your take on the president's venture to open a new military branch space force? And then he says, thank you.
Well, first of all, ostensibly, we already have a space force. I mean, we have a space force. It's part of the Air Force, and it is responsible for maintaining, launching, categorizing, defending all of our space assets. It's responsible for military as well as civilian, and it heavily surveils. There are weapons in space that are managed by the Space Defense Authority, part of the Air Force, Space Defense Command. There are killer satellites There are satellites that surveil other satellites, that are satellites that are programmed to explode internally and knock out enemy satellites. So we have them, the Russians have them, the Chinese have them. The Air Force managed to shoot down a satellite in 1985, and that's like 33 years ago. We were the first country to shoot down a satellite with a missile fired from an F-15 very at its ceiling with a specially modified missile. So we have that ability to shoot down back in the 80s satellites that we want to. So we already have the elements of a space force. The problem is that the first country to declare a space army, a space navy openly is basically weaponizing space. Even though space is weaponized to some extent, having a force fighting battles in space, having human-controlled battles in space, that there are treaties right now which eliminate hostile activities in space.
Yes.
And the creation of a branch of the military specifically designed for war fighting in space would be the kind of a provocation that would get other powers to do the same. And the spending would be, I cannot begin to tell you. Now, why is there a space force? Why is this a proposal? I'm sorry. I apologize in advance to everybody, to the true believers out there. I apologize. But I know these people, and they really are greedy and corrupt. The reason there is a push for a space force right now is that it's going to be all contracted out to private military contractors. It is to grow that sector of the defense industry economy. It has nothing to do with space forces. It is to take tax money to those defense contractors. Ostensibly, they're going to hire, so yes, it'll be job creation. But on the other hand, it is enriching a bunch of defense contractor oligarchs. That's really what it is, using private money. Thank you very much.
Speaking of the Space Force, I always have debates with people about this because I first saw a space drone land, and then after it was on Breaking World News on ABC, I didn't see it again. So another thing that Edgar Mitchell, rest his soul, told me off the record, not on any of the 12 or so interviews I've done with him, especially as he was getting sicker and sicker and was almost ready to pass away. He told me a few things that he didn't want to say on the air, but he did say that many, if not most or all, of the shuttles or the Apollo rockets that went up had a military astronaut. Usually what would happen is they'd put the military astronaut first before they started the parade of the civilian astronauts. You believe in that, don't you? Or at least you think it's a possibility, right?
It's a possibility, sure. Of course it is.
And at the same time, now that we're using all these drones, and I saw that space drone, which finally told me that they're going public with it, I have a feeling that if I was younger, of course, I would do anything possible to join in the Space Force. However, I don't think it's going to be what people are thinking. Oh, they're constantly getting in rockets or whatever technology they're using.
No, it's not Tom. No, this is not Tom Corbett's Space Cadet. It's a bunch of kids barely out of high school sitting in big machines directing
and Nellis Air Force Range
autonomous
and
vehicles.
just playing video games, essentially.
Right.
Right? Yeah. A lot. That's what it's going to be a lot of. Okay, let me get to these other last two before we take our break. Okay. Oh, we already mentioned this one. Well, here's the last one. Okay. Ricky Peevler Jr. asks Birnes, ask Birnes if him and his wife Nancy ever made up with Don and Vicky Ecker.
No, short answer. No.
Ah.
And that's actually a funny story. For your guest. What happened was, Vicky and Don had approached me all the way back in 1990, probably late 97. 1997. That the magazine was in a lot of trouble financially, and when they found out that it was this motion picture company that had acquired Phil Corso's life rights, that they had just basically hired me, that they had acquired his life story rights for a motion picture, and then in the course of trying to set a motion picture up, which they never did, they were advised that they needed a book. So since I was already representing a series of, I was already working for them on another book. That was this book on POWs. That's when they switched over to, we'll do the book on Corso. So that was on the one hand that happened. And then after all that, then they had asked me if I could arrange a deal to get the motion picture company to finance UFO magazine. So the motion picture company, they're not in the business of charity. They basically said, sure, but we want to own it. If we're going to find, I mean, you can own it. You can minority share. We'll give you, let's keep a minority share, but you guys will have to, but we're going to own it if we're going to pay for it. And they signed the deal. And the motion picture company bought the magazine. And then in, I would say 98, 5 years later, they just lost money with every issue. They never made the money back. And they said, we're just closing it down. We're giving it up. And so I said, well, give it to me. So they did. And then I gave it to Vicky and Don. We said, we'll publish it together. And that's when all the problems started.
Now, last question. This is a little bit more of mine, but because when people I told or when you were advertised they're going to be on today's show, they know you for many reasons, but also as the person who had UFO magazine. So with me and all the other people, what's it going to take to have a hard copy print magazine again?
It will take a lot of money because I'll be blunt with you. I mean, what is printing? Printing is what is it? A 15th century technology, movable type, 15th century technology that is married to a 19th century mechanism of distribution. That's what hard copy printing is.
Understood.
I mean, it is, the overhead is unbelievable. Then if you want to go to color, you're not even, the United States, our printing companies are priced out of the market. You have to go to China. And we still did 4-color printing in California, but I got to tell you, it was that's why we have to keep the press run small, because to do a large press run with 4-color, you basically, is ridiculous. You go to the Far East, and then you have to stand there while it comes off press, because you get, I mean, the color coordinators on those machines, they don't know what you're doing. You got to be there. So it's an expensive proposition all the way around. Then you're dealing with a double lever of distribution. So from the printer's shipping dock, it goes to a distribution company. The distribution company actually sends it to the jobbers that send it out to the local vendors. Meanwhile, you've got a subscription service that handles all the delivery. It's just a nightmare. It really is. We did it, and we did it every single month, but also you're doing it while your show is on the air, so you're getting the new subscribers. Once you fall below a base, then there's the advertising. I don't even want to get into the advertising because every single crazy in the world decides to advertise, and you've got to have your cutoffs. We are not, and I was absolute about this, we would not handle porn, period, end of story. I mean, were we to handle porn, we'd still be in print today because the money is huge, but I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to expose. I know who my readers are. And there are a lot of kids who are my readers. If you think that I'm going to let porn in that magazine, that's not going to happen. Well, that was something else. And so the subscription base kept getting smaller. And finally, we made the decision to go from print to digital. And we were going to do that. We had a digital ready to go. And the owner of the trademark said, no, we want a hard copy. We said, well, unless you're willing to spend $15,000, $20,000 a month, they said, no, we'll close it down. And they did.
Now, that's the thing with digital versus print. I know a lot of people are using Amazon Kindle or other things like that. For me personally, I'm sick of looking at an iPad or an iPhone, or computer, or TV. I like traditional books. So I hope there's enough people out there that will absolutely start. If this comes back to print, we'll jump on it. Because first we lost the number one, which was yours, UFO Magazine. Then we lost Open Minds, which wasn't nearly as good as yours, but it still covered the topics that are only covered now
when Johnny
on the
Rao, when Johnny Rao was starting Open Minds, I remember he and I had this very heart-to-heart conversation. So all the way back, probably 20 years ago, and I was telling him then, I said, you are getting into a brutal business. I said, you're starting from ground zero. See, he had bought the Laughlin UFO Congress from the Browns. And so he was thinking how he could use that to leverage a print magazine. And then Alejandro Rojas was going to be the editor. And I just told him, I said, look, it's just you're going to lose money. You're going to be pouring money into it, and you're not going to get anything out of it. You're not going to get any returns out of it. It's not going to be the magazine that's going to sell the UFO Congress, because most of your subscriptions are going to be online anyway, not in print. So sure enough, I think Open Minds is now it's an online facility now, and it's very big. And Alejandro bought it from John Rao, and he owns it now. And but UFOs as a business is just a very tough business.
Oh, absolutely. But the good thing now, Bill, is as opposed to when I first started studying this topic and first started subscribing to your magazine, and I would be, say, at my family's restaurant reading it, people were calling me weirdo. But I noticed that there's a big influx of younger people who don't even question if we're alone or not. They know we are not alone. They know that, without a doubt. So I'm hoping that generation will finally lead what they can. But if everything is locked up in black military projects, what can we really get? But anyway, folks, I want you to stay tuned because we literally have 25 minutes, and I do have another topic I want to talk about relating to Trans World Airlines Flight 800. So everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back in literally 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes.
There are days that the red pill is bitter in my stomach, but I can't get it back out. I think because I have to. I speak because I have no choice. I walk through this dark age we're in with open eyes. Listen to Open Eyes on latenightinthemidlands.com. And together, maybe we won't stumble and fall.
Data. The sensors can't penetrate the planet's ionosphere. There's too much interference. Can you find a way to scan for life forms?
I would be happy to, sir. I just love scanning for life forms. Life forms. You tiny little life forms. You precious little life forms. Where are you?
Even the ETs know this is the place to be. L&M Radio Network.
You can listen to the L&M Radio Network 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through the Paranormal Radio app. Available from lnmradionetwork.com or TalkStreamLive.com on both Android and Apple. Our call to listen line is open 24/7. Dial 701-719-9704 so you can listen on the go.
Ever wanted to be sure your robot slave was behaving? Is Echo getting out of control and meeting with Alexa when you're not around? You need RoboGrog. RoboGrog is the new product from Snooze You Lose, the company that also brought you the fine products of Flog a Horse and Calm You Down Now. RoboGrog will put your robotic minions to sleep, bringing their AI a sense of peace and comfort. It does this by sending bolts of electricity straight where the sun doesn't shine. Get RoboGrog today at any fine retailer and set yourself free from the devices that bind you.
You can't just throw someone into prison and silence their warning because you don't agree with them. You don't have to like my methods or what I stand for. Silencing me won't make the problem go away. It will just whittle away at the ability of people to be ready for the real threats. And when the worst happens, and it will, maybe you can take comfort in protecting the people from a dangerous radical who wanted to tell them the truth.
Tired of searching for great talk and great information? Look no more. L&M Radio Network, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Back home, there's a growing pro-Earth movement. Rumors of hate groups targeting aliens. And on all sides, the fanatics think that society has to be protected against anyone who's different. I'm starting to wonder if what we just saw is a preview of things to come.
Oh, I can't believe we'd be that foolish. Santayana. Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
Stand by. We're having technical difficulties again. Dr. J, are you there? Dr. J?
You could tell a long time ago.
Dr. J, please stand by. We are having technical difficulties. We're trying to get the host back.
Sorry about that, folks. A little technical difficulties. But then again, we're speaking to Mr. Bill Birnes, and I wouldn't be surprised if that is why things are being blocked. He has a head full of information and a long time in researching. And like I said, he is also a radio host and many, many more things. Now, near the end of the show, all of you folks will hear everything about him because I'm going to let him plug in every site, book, where you can buy them, how you can hear his show, and all of the above. And the show that he does with his wife, Nancy Birnes, is really incredible. I remember when they had me on there, which was, I would have to say, maybe end of January, early February 2015, after Mr. Art Bell, the late Art Bell, had brought me in. So again, if you caught the show late, like I said, that you are listening to Dr. J Radio Live. And on top of that, obviously it's a given. My name is Dr. J. And remember, folks, I'll say this again at the end. Every single thing you need to know about the show is the name of the show. For instance, the website, drjradiolive.com. At symbol, right? That's usually what people use these days for Twitter or Instagram, etc., even Minds. It's all the same at DRJ Radio Live, Dr. J Radio Live. Okay, so let me just say a few of them to you. There's minds.com, which I really hope you guys go into that because it also pays you in cryptocurrency and it's far more easier to navigate than Facebook. And on top of that, there are a lot of very intellectual people. And it's very easy to earn these Minds tokens. You could either trade them for cash, and like I said, you're not paying anything. They don't want a card or anything or any sort of payment. They will just give them to you for being active. If you're active on Facebook, well, then you're good to go. So another thing I wanted to tell you was the other sites or the other places that I have all these different social media. So let me see if I could say them all without missing any. Obviously, YouTube, especially those right now who are on it. There is Minds, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google+, Buffer, Pinterest, Flickr, Tumblr, and anything you could think of, you're going to find it under the same thing. All one word, Dr. J Radio Live. Again, DRJ Radio Live. Now, I got to get to my guest because I do not want to run out of time since we literally have 15 minutes before there's a break before the next show. And of course, folks, I know there's a lot more you want to ask him. And this is why Bill is such a great guest. And I'm going to bring him on. And another time, I'm going to bring Bill and Nancy on. So now I'm going to get to the next topic, which is actually very related to this. The 2016 very controversial election with Donald Trump and Hillary Rodham Clinton, also known as Crooked Hillary. Why did TWA Flight 800 affect it?
Because the group that was assigned to protect the cover-up of what brought Flight 800 down was the New York office of the FBI. Obviously, they're the closest ones. Everything took place right on Long Island, part of New York State. And as they were trying to button up the leaks in this investigation, not to reveal that the Navy shot the plane down, but really throw a bunch of sand in the media's eyes, come up with a false story. They also prosecuted this reporter, Jim Sanders, because they believed that he'd suborned theft of the seatback cushion from the Calverton reconstruction site. He didn't, but that was their argument. And what happened was, we believe that the FBI from that New York office 20 years ago was forced to really really play lapdogs to the administration by not telling the truth about what turned out to be a negligent homicide by the United States Navy in killing 240 people.
Wow.
And they blamed the Clintons. They blamed the Clintons for this. They blamed Bill and Hillary Clinton for this cover-up. A lot of people did. And so when the time came when the FBI was really furious, the New York office, that they were furious. They really never got a chance to pursue. They said that Hillary Clinton's lost emails, the 33,000 emails.
Yeah.
The real story of that, and I'll be brief, the real story of that was that Clinton did delete those personal emails from her server. They shared a server with her, work emails, until the time came that they had to be turned over to the government for processing. So Clinton took off her 33,000 emails, her personal emails, from that one server. Then that server was subpoenaed. So what happened was, this was a hard drive, when she was going to turn the emails over for processing, she had asked the website manager that she had, the server manager, to delete all her personal emails, take them off the server, off the drive, and basically just delete them from the drive. He didn't. That's why he received immunity in the House hearings. He didn't delete them from the drive. What happened was he left them there, then the subpoena came, then he deleted the 33,000 emails. So Hillary Clinton never deleted those emails. He did. And the problem was that once he did that, he was then subpoenaed to testify before either the House or the Senate, I forget which committee. That's why they granted him immunity, because he had, after an order to preserve the drive as is, he then altered the drive by deleting those emails. At least that was one story that I heard. So that was how the whole email story got started. When suddenly Hillary's emails began turning up to Huma Abedin, her assistant, on Anthony Weiner's computer, because Huma Abedin used his computer for printing, suddenly the FBI office in New York thought they found the treasure trove. They hadn't. They were duplicate emails. But then they threatened Jim Comey that they were going to release that information to Rudy Giuliani and force Jim Comey's hand. Jim Comey's coming out in the weeks before the election turned the election around. And that's why the Flight 800, the downing of Flight 800 by a Navy missile, the resulting FBI participation in that cover-up, the FBI's revenge against the Clintons, all resulted in who won the 2016 election.
Now, here's the thing. Do you think that if Hillary had won, obviously she would have done everything in her power to keep swooping it under the rug? But here is my biggest thing. I have a feeling that the cabal, including her, the secret government, who get away with everything, which is why I'm still shocked that she's not in handcuffs for rigging the election and colluding with the United Kingdom.
Who rigged the election?
Oh, Hillary, the DNC, John Brennan, James Comey.
How did they rig the election? Tell me.
Oh, I can give you a quick rundown.
Please do.
Okay. So, early on in 2016, when they started to think that Trump may have a chance at getting more votes, what happened was they wanted to make sure that they could rig the election for Hillary. And two, had he won, they wanted some sort of insurance policy. So Debbie Wasserman Schultz of the DNC and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, the people at Fusion GPS, Bud Orr, his wife, etc. It goes down to so many people. Andrew McCabe. It's approximately just under 30. And so what they did is, I know you know what FISA means, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Well, that's supposed to be for the so-called terrorists that they used to scare us. It's a way to spy on you without you really knowing. And the problem with the FISA court is the defense never knows that there is anything going on. And a FISA court is always...
So you're talking about the FISA court that was put into operation after 9/11 by Republican George W. Bush.
Yes,
and Republican
exactly.
Dick Cheney.
Exactly.
So this is a Republican operation. Go ahead.
So regardless, is they paid Fusion GPS however much money to find dirt on Trump, because like I said,
Who paid Fusion GPS?
The DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And so
who was first to contract with Fusion GPS?
I either the DNC, Hillary, obviously they got permission
first to bring
Obama
in Fusion GPS. The
So
first group.
Okay, so regardless, what they needed was
No. Regardless, who was the first group? Are you going to come at me with facts? You come at me with facts. Who was the first group
honestly,
to contract with Fusion GPS?
I think it was the DNC. Jerome Corsi wrote a book about.
No, it was not. It was not, and it wasn't Jerry Corsi. It wasn't Jerry Corsi. So let's get him out of the way. So it was not Corsi at all. What happened was the group that contracted with Fusion GPS to do operation research on Donald Trump was a Republican law firm connected to, I think, the Washington Observer or the Washington Times. They were hired by a group of Republican candidates in the Republican primary in 2015 through 2016 to gather all the opposition research on Donald Trump. This group there were two research operations going on at the same time, one run by the RNC against the Clintons and the DNC, and one run by the Democratic candidates but also Democratic candidates against whomever the Republican candidate was going to be. But the primary opposition research was being done by Republicans against the Trump campaign. That was the primary research. The Washington Times and the Washington Observer hired Fusion GPS, an American company, not a British company, an American company. Fusion GPS then worked securing as many avenues into Trump's background as possible, doing the opposition research until Trump won the primary. This was now 2016. Yes. So Fusion GPS was no longer being paid. So they contacted a lawyer for a Democratic law firm. I forget the guy's name, but I know him and I know his law firm. They picked up the contract that the Republicans had started. So any argument you give me that Fusion GPS was hired by the Democrats? No. Fusion GPS was hired by the Republicans, and then they continued in their operation by the Democrats. Now go ahead.
You're absolutely right. The establishment, people like John McCain or other establishment Republicans, clearly did not want someone like Donald Trump to be president. So what they needed to do to get a warrant, a FISA warrant in a FISA court, they needed someone to corroborate what.
Go back to Fusion GPS. Why? Yes. Where does Fusion GPS now come into the FISA warrant?
Because what they needed to do is they needed somebody. It was Christopher Steele, a disgraced MI6 agent who was also a former rat.
He wasn't disgraced. He was never disgraced MI6 agent. He was a former MI6 agent who was now being hired
by
to
the
do
FBI.
private research by a number of agencies, including the NSA, the FBI, the CIA, and obviously the British intelligence services, including Fusion, which was a private intelligence service. So he was not disgraced. Go ahead.
Do know he was paid $50,000 to testify. He was paid by the FBI to testify that everything that Fusion GPS said or compiled was accurate on him. And by doing that, they ended up having a FISA warrant on Carter Page to be.
You are so wrong. First of all, your dates are all off. The FISA warrant on Carter Page started all the way back in 2014 before he was involved with the Trump campaign. A. B. Carter Page was being turned into a Russian asset by a bunch of Russian bankers who were actually intelligence officers for the GRU. So he was being used as an asset because he was contacting them. In fact, even before the FISA warrant was authorized, was sworn out, it's sworn out by by a series of affidavits, even before the FISA warrant, the FBI actually contacted Carter Page to tell him he was being used as an asset by Russians, one of whom was under sanction, one of whose bank was under sanction, and they were being tracked. So Carter Page knew that the FBI knew that he was being contacted by Russians under sanction, under suspicion by the FBI. He knew this at the start of 2015. Finally, when foreign intelligence services, read MI6, read the French Deuxième, read the Sûreté, read all these services, including the Israeli Mossad, warned the FBI that they had picked up Russian intercepts talking about this person, Carter Page. That's when the FBI get interested. And believe it or not, this dovetailed with an investigation into George Papadopoulos, who was outed by the Austrian ambassador, who was drunk, who was saying that the Russians had the emails. So these two things came together prior to Trump's winning the primary in 2016. Before the primary, that's when then when Paul Manafort got involved, who was already under investigation by the FBI for money laundering, not anything else. It was already being investigated for that, and for FARA, the Foreign Agents Reporting Act. Because of that, all three things dovetailed. That was the basis of the FISA warrant on Carter Page. So sorry.
No. Don't apologize. I'm actually going to have the two people that I've had talking about this listen to what you just said, because one was Jerome Corsi about killing the deep
You
state.
bring him on. And
He's been on. He's absolutely been on.
He wants to fight with me. He wants to mix it up with me. I'll take off his head.
And Roger Stone too. So I think.
Oh, really?
Tell
Roger Stone. Tell Roger Stone from me. Hey, Roger. Rick Lursman says hello. Tell him that exact message.
Wait, what was the name he said? Rick Wilson?
Rick Lursman, Lertzman, says hello. Let's get us all on the air together. Corsi, Stone, Lursman, and me, all on the air together. Let's go.
Can you spell the last name one more time for Rick?
Lertzman.
Lertz.
Lertzman.
Yes. Rick Litz. Wait, Lertzman.
Roger knows who he is.
Oh, I'm sure he would. Yeah, absolutely. And he's going to come back sometime next month. Obviously, I wanted him on election night, but he's doing Alex Jones that day. He actually now, I'm sure, hosts his own show on InfoWars. It's the War Room. He does it Monday through Friday for 1 hour, 5 p.m. Eastern time. But yes, when he comes back, I would love if you and him, and especially Corsi, because he's the one that wrote the book Killing the Deep State, which goes back to this election rigging. And since you have more details than what I've read, which I thought was the full picture, then I definitely.
You have no idea. You are so far out in the void of the universe, And you don't know how big this is and how awful it is and how the very people you're telling about are part of this. You have no idea. You think you were screwed by the deep state? Not that there is a deep state, because there isn't. But you think that there is one of the screwing you. You have no idea how screwed you now are. You have no idea how bad it is. You have no idea what people like Trumps, the Mercers, the Koch brothers, all these individuals. You think that these people are populists? Who do you think finances them? Who do you think financed Jerry Corsi to write that stupid Swift book that he wrote? Who do you think did that? Who do you think finances the Steve Bannons of the world, the Mercers, the Kochs, all those people? You are a useful idiot being manipulated by those people with far more money than they can even count.
That's absolutely true. And you know what?
So why are you carrying water for them? They're your enemies. Do you understand they're your enemies? Do you understand that a tax bill was just passed, signed by your boy Donald Trump, fully endorsed by him, fully with Ryan and McConnell? So if you actually hold a tea bag in your hands and think somehow you're still a tea bagger, they just blew a $1.5 trillion added deficit. And Trump wants to add to that deficit because he's a financial idiot. And here's the other thing. Here's the other thing you don't know. How they're going to pay for part of this thing? By taking away your Social Security, privatizing it. And so that, in other words, taking all that. So what are you yesing me for? Those are the idiots that want this, the Jerry Corsis and the Roger Stones. They're supporting this. You're being robbed, and you're giving them the money.
Well, fortunately, I haven't given them any money.
I can't understand your thinking. No. Figuratively. Because you put money every week into Social Security. You put money every week into your Medicare program. Look at your paycheck once in a while and see what you put in deductions. When the time comes for you to take it out, buddy, it's not going to be there. It's going to be with the Steve Mnuchins, with the Wilbur Rosses, with people like that, all financed by all supported by the Jerry Corsis and Roger Stones of the world. You are screwed, and you don't know it yet, but you will. Unfortunately, not for another 20 years.
This is actually why I love talking to you so much, Bill, because you know far more than what other people know, and you really analyze things in a proper way. I am actually really excited to hear a story that from you that is something that I got wrong. Unfortunately, we are getting out of time. We are actually out of time. So I want to have you on with both or one or the other, whichever you prefer, because I think it would be great to
If you're doing Roger Stone, you get the four of us on.
Yeah. He was on.
And,
he was
and
on
you can
like.
let the audience send in their questions, and you can just throw meat on the table.
Well, he was on literally 10 days ago, and he will come back within the next month. And so
he'll be back. Right.
So don't worry, we'll have you on. Now, because we are so close to the end of the time, we've actually gone a little 3 minutes past the time. I know you're always such a great guest, and now that I'm back on air live, 4 days a week, live shows. The fifth day is going to be a call, unscreened calls, or in the meantime, it's just an encore of what people want to hear. So we will definitely do this again, Bill. Real quick, though, let's talk about, since we're really, really cutting it close, tell the people about where they can find you, your websites, your radio show, how they can buy your books, and plug in anything you want.
This is www.shadowrunpress.com. All my books are there. My latest books are, the book that is out now is UFOs in the White House. This is what our presidents knew. When did they know about UFOs? It is the history of the United States looking down from a UFO at the country. That's that book. And folks can always get Dr. Feelgood, which even Roger Stone thinks is a good book. Dr. Feelgood is out. And on coming out in a few months, I think, is the Big Book of UFO list, the Big Book of UFOs that I wrote with Steve Spignesi. That's coming out from Skyhorse. Folks can get that.
And I
All my
also
books
hope
are,
we can get UFO Magazine up and running at some point. I know it's very difficult, and I know it costs a lot of money, but enough people that I've talked to still want it. As a matter of fact, not only do I have every issue since I subscribed, the very first issue was the Mars. I think you had the rover on there or something on it. I don't know.
Ship X artwork where somebody was standing by the rover and saying no parking or something?
No. It was literally the Mars on the cover. I know it wasn't that far from when the cover was the day after Roswell. I'm not talking about months. I mean, it could have been a year or two,
So
but
it's
it was
probably
in that year.
it's probably 2000 something. Okay, good. Okay,
Yes.
well, folks can if I had the money to buy the trademark, I'd hire somebody and do UFO magazine. But I know how I do it now, but it's not the same. So that's one. Folks, go to Shadowlord Press. I've got a whole page on Amazon. Folks can buy my books there. The Day After Roswell is still available. It's now out in trade paperback.
Exactly. And I'm sorry we are actually passed into the other show, so I do have to rush you off. Bill, just hang tight for 1 minute. And everybody out there listening, believe me, Bill Birnes is really an authority on this topic. If it wasn't for Bill Birnes' publications and listening to him in a show, Future Theater, right, with you and Nancy?
Yep, that was the show.
Exactly. So everyone, you can hear so much from him, and he is so knowledgeable that you will hear more of him now that I'm finally back after this little 20-month plus break. But again, I'm very glad I had him on today, and clearly we didn't get to all the topics, and with a little bit of technical difficulty. I think, Bill, because people want to talk to you, or people up top are scared of the knowledge you have, it makes sense that they are trying to shut you up. The good thing is the younger generation actually pays attention to these things. The demographics are either people older, say over 35, till their 60s or 70s, and instead of people, say, in their mid-20s to late 30s, the other demographic is the younger people, because as they grew up, they knew about Goldilocks planets, they knew about so many things, and when you ask them, do you believe in extraterrestrial life? There is no doubt whatsoever. And I just want you to tell you on air that you've had such a fabulous, great influence on me. And I know for a fact, Bill, I would never be doing this if it wasn't for your influence. Again, everybody, I'm sorry, we are cutting into the next show. So let me just thank Bill again online and on air. Remember, let me just also thank the listeners, because if it wasn't for you people listening all around the world, then we wouldn't be doing this. And clearly you guys are very interested because of the amount of listeners. Let me just thank Katie and Daryl Neely, the managers and the audio engineers of Late Night in the Midlands, who do a lot behind the scenes, helping the show, helping every show, and everything with the network. We also have to thank Michael Vara, who runs the network. Black Swamp Digital Radio. We have Wise Frog. He is now also simultaneously syndicating the show the same time, folks. And of course, in the United Kingdom, we have Deprogrammed Radio Network, which gives us a lot of the London listeners, Leeds listeners, Bristol, and everything else. And with Late Night in the Midlands and Deprogrammed, if you go onto their sites, you can actually see that they're terrestrial stations. So if you prefer to listen while you're driving or just on a regular radio, there is a good chance, depending on where you live, that they will be there. And let me also say this to you folks, more and more and more terrestrial stations will come and more networks will come because syndication is the name of the game. Well, let me just tell you, everybody, my final I have to thank you to everybody. Remember, folks, this is a little piece of knowledge I try to throw in as much as often. Disclosure, folks, is in your hands. All these conspiracies, whether it be from the government, well, most of them emanate from the government, but from whether it be extraterrestrials, anything paranormal, secret weaponry, bases, deep underground military bases, all of the above. You folks, if you're just passive people, then it's not going to help you. I am asking you to all be proactive because disclosure, folks, is in your hands. And also, if that wasn't the case, if it wasn't for people that interact with the show and talk about the show, then we're getting that much closer to truth. So I please ask all of you to remember that disclosure is in your hands. With that being said, remember, tomorrow we have 2 guests. So I hope you all enjoy them. We're bringing back Dr. Shiva, who is running against Pocahontas, also known as Senator Elizabeth Warren. I have to be careful.
So you're going to insult Native Americans now too? You're talking to one of them now.
No, because she's not. That's the difference. And then hour 2, we have Robert Zimmerman talking.
How do you know she's not?
Because
Did you see her DNA?
She refuses to take DNA. Dr. Shiva keeps sending her DNA tests, and everybody in the Cherokee.
Tell Dr. Shiva to stop sending DNA. And it's none of her business what her DNA is. My God, you claim to be a populist, pro-American guy, and you're not even standing up for privacy in America. It's amazing.
No, believe me, I am. The thing is
you're not
lied to get into Harvard law.
She did not. Okay.
Well, again,
okay. For all the brain dead people out there that are listening to this, here is how that works. You fill out an application. On the application, it says, because I fill these out, have you been told? Are you this? Is there family history of any kind of what your ethnicity is? And on the family history, Elizabeth Warren was told by her mother that that part of her family came from the Cherokee Nation, so she put down Cherokee. It didn't enter into hiring decisions. It didn't enter into any decisions. It was just on a standard form that I fill out all the time when I'm applying for contract work or for grant work. Are you a minority? I'm not a minority, but that's what I fill out. So
I hear what you're saying. I get because of the Cherokee people that all have no records of any of her family going back hundreds of years, and also every other American Indian or Native American.
Oh, you checked?
No. I've talked to a lot of people, but regardless, Mr. Birnes, we are literally over the show. So I'm going to say goodbye to everybody and just stick around for a couple minutes. I'd love to talk to you a little bit more. Everybody out there, again, search Bill Birnes. You will find so much information. Listen to his show with him and Nancy. Read his books. They are mind-blowing. When I first read the book when it came out, the hard copy of The Day After Roswell, that really blew my mind, and it was one of the truly most amazing books. So again, Bill, I have to thank you. I have to thank all the people who are running the show from the U.S. and the U.K. and everybody else involved. Also Pam Rettenberg and Maggie Retzer, 2 people who are also helping off on the show behind the scenes, which I have to thank them as well. And again, I want to make sure all you listeners are, whatever topics you want to hear, please contact me. With that being said, we are sorry we're cutting into the next show, but let me say at this point, folks, It is time, and this is Dr. J, host of Dr. J Radio Live, and I am officially going, I'm signing off. That would be the best way to put it. I'll see you tomorrow, folks.
You're off.
Okay, good.
Good.
Hey,
okay.
No, yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I'm just only going by what people are saying. It's a controversy. You know,